Hey everyone, Tactics here, bringing you my second Tazavesh Mythic Plus guide, this time going in-depth into the second half of the Mega Dungeon, Solea's Gambit. Just like in my other video covering the first portion, Streets of Wonder, I'll be looking at everything you need to know about the dungeon, what's changed coming into this patch, as well as things like important interrupts on trash mobs, boss mechanics, and even a simple encrypted route at the end. If you want to watch the other video where I covered Streets of Wonder, I'll link that down below and you can probably click it above as well. But now let's just get started with the trash in this dungeon. So in this first area, there is just a ton of murlocs everywhere, a few giants as well. To note, every single murloc in this area will run away in fear at low HP. So you want to make sure things are either slowed or you save CCs for near the end of packs, because a lot of the ads are in pretty close proximity to other packs, and they can just chain pull this entire area if you're not careful. And the route I do actually will hopefully kind of help deal with that. It makes it a little less likely they're going to chain pull, but in general you just want to be aware that they're all going to do that at low HP, so be very, very careful. Coming into the individual ads, we have the Merkbrine Shell Crusher. These guys just have a big tank hit in Shell Cracker. This is also an anti-kite, so it's a fervent strike. If you try and kite away, it'll hit the closest person instead. And it's also a knockback as well. And you can't stop this, you can't do anything, you just kind of have to take it to the face as a tank. So be sure you have some sort of physical defensive up for that. They also will cast Cry of Sure, let's go with that. It'll enrage all nearby murlocs. They'll do this when they are below 50% HP. Again, not stoppable. It just delays the cast. They'll just keep trying to cast it over and over and over again, and you just need to soothe this. The casters in these groups are the Fish Mancers. They'll just cast Water Bolt. This is a tank hit. Think Wicked Bolt, except this does actually have a cooldown, so they won't chain cast this ability. It has an 8-second internal cooldown on it, so whether you kick it or not, they're not going to cast this multiple times in an 8-second window. Their other spell is Volatile Pufferfish, and this just throws a pufferfish at a random player. It's just an 8-yard swirly on the ground that you need to dodge. Honestly, not worth kicking. I would just focus on kicking those water bolts, but you're going to have probably a bunch of extra kicks in these murloc packs, so there's no reason not to kick the pufferfish as well, but I think the water bolts are the priority. Wave jumpers in these packs, they just have a leap attack. It'll just leap to a random player in your party, go out to them obviously, and deal a physical damage hit to them. Again, here, not stoppable. It will just keep trying to cast that leap attack. So just don't worry, you're just going to have to use a defensive or something on higher keys, but on lower keys, this damage is not too bad. The short runners in this area, nothing to mention there. They actually just auto attack, so not a big deal them. But the real scary guys and the real annoying guys, actually, not really scary, just annoying, in this area are the scale binders. So they have the invigorating fish sticks, and maybe some of you that have done this dungeon on Mythic 0 know what I'm talking about, but this is just a totem. So it doesn't get hit by AoE attacks. It's a totem that gets dropped on the ground, and it has a 25% 20-yard radius DR and heal to all the murlocs nearby. And again, not stoppable. So you need to kind of either hard nuke these skill binders down before they even get a cast, like kind of stun lock them, or you need to hard swap to these fish sticks, or if you can, knock skill binders out when they're trying to cast and pull the rest of the pack away, but that's easier said than done. You'll see that a lot of the packs that I pull in the route are actually designed around only having a maximum of one scale binder in a pull, because having more than one is just a giant pain. You trust me, you really, really want to avoid that. Like a 25% DR on its own is a pain, but you have to remember at the same time they're going to be healing, so that's just it's going to really, really extend pulls if you let this fish stick get too many ticks off. So that's the main thing you want to worry about. The big guys that aren't murlocs patrolling around in this area are the Coast Walker Goliaths. They have just a boulder throw. They'll throw a rock at a random player, just a 5-yard AoE, you just avoid that. And then they have Tidal Stomp, which is a full party hit. I believe it's shadow damage, and it puts a debuff on you that just makes your damage taken from Tidal Stomp increase, which effectively kind of puts you on a timer whenever you pull a Goliath. So you normally want to pull these guys and hard focus them down in the packs that you're pulling them in. This was recently tuned down. Early on in the PTR, they were doing insane damage. Now it's fine though, so it's honestly not too big. They're pretty easy to take down, assuming you are just focusing them and not just AoEing everything around them if you pull it with stuff. Moving into towards the boss, there are 4 Stormforged Guardian guys, and these guys are super annoying. So they'll do a charged pulse attack, which is a 15-yard AoE around them that also knocks back, and then they'll do Crackle as well, which is a line of lightning they shoot towards a random target. Honestly, these are just a giant pain in the ass, and for most routes, and including this one, I actually recommend skipping it. I know it's a simple route. I know I try to avoid skips. These guys are just, they're big mobs. They have a lot of HP. They're small mob density, and they're not worth it because they are a giant annoyance. So, especially for melee DPS. If you're a full range comp, maybe you can actually just pull all 4 at the same time. But if you have any melee DPS, they're just going to have a bad time, and I recommend skipping these guys and actually never pulling them ever, even though they're directly in your path. Now, after you pass that first boss, you'll get to the pirate area, and there's a bunch of guys in here. So actually some mobs have seen some changes on the PTR. They actually have different abilities than they do on live. So the Burly Deckhand, they used to have this Disruptive Shout ability. That has been removed. They no longer have that. In its place, they have Haymaker, which is just a bit of a tank buster. It's honestly a pretty small tank buster. It doesn't hit that hard. It is also an anti-kite, so you can't run away or to punch a melee instead. And they do still have Super Saison, their 100% damage increase, and Rage effect, which you just dispel after it goes off, or soothe rather. Not dispellable, soothable. Also with them in this area are the Hourglass Tide Sages. They have Brackish Bolt. This is a Wicked Bolt clone, so just kind of spam at the tank. And they also have Tidal Burst, which is a swirly that'll appear on a random player, and when the cast finishes, it does a bunch of damage and knocks up. Again, you can just dodge this, no need to waste a kick, especially because this mob will kind of spam those Brackish Bolts at the tank, as opposed to the Water Bolt earlier in the dungeon, so more Brackish Bolt kicks is definitely a good thing. Corsair Officers, the last mob in this area, they've been absolutely neutered in this dungeon now on the PTR. So previously they had this pretty hard-hitting Sword Toss ability, which was like a channeled line attack. That ability is now just a random target single hit. It honestly was not even doing much damage at all on the PTR. So you no longer have to worry about that line channel. They will just deal random damage, and that's pretty much it. Honestly, Officers are probably the easiest to add in this area now. That wraps up the pirate area. You then move back into a broker type area where there's 3 mobs to worry about here. There's the Adorned Starseers. These are by far the most dangerous mob. There's a 2-pack of them, which you can't avoid, and then there's a 1-pack right at the beginning, which you can kind of walk around. And basically, these things have a drifting star line attack, so they'll face a random player, charge it up, and shoot a pretty big orb in a line at that player. Melee, be careful because it's bigger than it seems, and it will pretty much one-shot you on a higher fortified key, so you want to make sure you're not getting hit by that. The other thing is the Wandering Pulsar ad. It'll just spawn a little orb, and it'll just pulse party damage until it dies, and it does a lot of party damage. So whenever those Wandering Pulsar spawns, those are the highest priority ads. You always want to hard swap, kill it ASAP, and then get back to the Starseer. The other ads in this area, Focus Ritualist, have the Hyperlight Bolt. Again, another Wicked Bolt clone from the first part of the dungeon in Streets of Wonder, so you can kick those. And then they have Unstable Rift, which is just a 60-yard range AoE party hit. And this, while kickable, is also stoppable, so you don't need to waste a kick. You can spend all your kicks on those Hyperlight Bolts, and you can just use a stun or a disorient or something like that to stop the Unstable Rift casts. The last ad in this area is the Devoted Accomplice. They will just energy slash your tank, put a stacking magic debuff on them that makes them take even more damage from this energy slash. So healers, you want to make sure the tank gets dispelled every so often because this stacks up quite quickly. When they get below 40% HP, they'll try and cast Reinvigorate. Again, same deal as Unstable Rift. This is interruptible, but also stoppable. So these are normally pulled alongside the Ritualists. So my suggestion is to actually put kicks on the Ritualist and put stops on this Reinvigorate cast. They'll only try and cast it once they're below 40% HP, so assuming you stop that, you won't have to worry about it again. And this is just a big heal on them. And haste increase, so I mean, in theory, you could spell steal it, but it's probably not worth it because it insta-heals at the beginning of the cast. So definitely just kick or stop that. trash done. There's honestly not too much trash in this dungeon, especially compared to Streets of Wonder. But now let's get into bosses. So the first guy, we've got Hylbrande, and he is honestly, all the bosses in this dungeon actually are pretty scary. I bet this is going to be a pretty scary tyrannical dungeon. So again, Hylbrande, so he has Purifying Burst. This is just it'll hit 3 random players for holy damage. This was hitting pretty hard on the PTR, and again, it's 3 random players, so you couldn't predict when you were getting hit by this Purifying Burst, and it was chunking. So I wouldn't be surprised if this got a little bit of a nerf at some point throughout the season, but yeah, I would just be careful for that. Shearing Swings is basically a cleave the boss does off the tank. It's 2 hits. The channel is actually much longer than the hits. The hits happen like initially and then halfway through the cast, and then the second half, or the end of the cast, actually doesn't do any damage. Tanks will know what I'm talking about as soon as they see the cast, but basically it'll cleave anyone in front of the boss, including with the tank. So don't be in front of the boss. Also good because Titanic Crash is a cone attack, also pointed at the tank, and it's a 4-second stun, so the tank will also want to step out of this one, and it shouldn't be pointed at anyone else. So just again, stay behind the boss. Purged by Fire is basically a laser debuff that will follow a single player, and you do not want to stand still for this because it leaves puddles on the ground, and those puddles chunk. So you want to kind of run this beam along the back of the room or the edge of the room. Basically, you're just trying not to block the center runes or the consoles or the front of the room. So start with the back. Try and fill in that back. Make good use of your space. These will disappear eventually, so you don't have to worry about permanently losing that space if you have a bad beam or anything. But you will want to, again, just run these out of the way as much as you can, and don't stand on those puddles because, yeah, they will kill you. Ads also spawn in this boss phase, Vault Purifiers, and they have a few abilities, so they'll channel a 25% DR on the boss, not kickable, so you have to stop this. So CC these guys when they're doing this channel, and the DR will go off from the boss. Otherwise, you're just not going to be doing much boss damage in this phase. They will also just kind of chain cast Valorous Bolt, and this will hit a random target with holy damage. So that overlapping with those Purifying Blasts is very deadly. So you want to just kick these guys in, bring them on top of the boss, cleave them down. If you do not kill them before the intermission, which happens at 100 energy, they will actually go to the consoles, 1 random console per ad, and kind of block them until you kill the ad. So what do these consoles do? Basically, on the ground when you come in, there's going to be 4 runic symbols, and in the intermission, those will pop up and be a clickable thing. And so 1 player each grabs one of those, and 1 player goes to the front console at the top of the room, and that'll show you where you have to put each rune. They relay that information to each of the rune characters, or carriers rather, and they put it in the right console. Now, I'm sure you're saying that sounds like an absolute nightmare in pugs. You are correct. Not in voice comms. This is going to be super rough, but luckily for you, there is an insanely helpful weak aura that kind of lets you fill in what the where the locations are for each rune, and says that to the rest of the party. I'll link that down below. Super helpful. Will probably be the meta for pugs on this boss, because otherwise it's going to be a little rough. But from there, the boss just kind of repeats each phase. So he has that boss phase, then the intermission phase, and note that he is immune during the intermission phase, so you don't really do damage to him, and just kind of repeats until he is dead. Then we come to everyone's favorite pirate dragon, Timecap'n Hooktail. And this boss has a couple things. So it has a breath and a tail swipe. So the infinite breath is just a frontal on the tank. It'll lock into place after a few seconds, and then it'll do a cast, so the tank can get out of it. And then it'll hit anything in that frontal, including any of the ads that spawn. So there are a bunch of brutes that summon occasionally, and they'll just run at people. And if these get hit by the breath, they take extra damage from it, and they'll get knocked back pretty far. These ads are fully CCable initially. You can do mass roots, you can do like big slows, stuns, ring up piece, all those good things to keep these guys either away from your group or locked into those breath cones. And also they will get hit by the hook swipe, which is the tail swipe. So if you go by the tail of the boss, he'll do some physical damage to you, knock you back, and also put a bleed on you. So these ads can get hit by both of those things, but so can your entire party. So you need to kind of stay, honestly, we had melee kind of stay at the front of the boss. because it's actually pretty easy to dodge that cone. At the front, it's very thin, right at the beginning of the cone. And the tail of the boss has a very big hitbox for that hook swipe. So melee, we found it safe to stay in front of the boss, and ranged kind of back into the side, so you're not too close to the tail, and you can let those adds kind of kite in through that frontal cone. Now, it is important that these adds will enrage when the boss casts double time. So these guys will get 100% move speed and attack speed. I don't believe they become CC immune, but they just get really, really fast. And so you want to try and make sure that you're constantly killing these adds so that double time buff doesn't really do anything. Throughout this fight, there's also some other things you have to deal with. So the cannon barrage, it'll just spawn fire puddles on the ground, area denial, so you will be forced to move this boss as the fight progresses, which can be very finicky because, again, that tail swipe hitbox, very large. You're also trying to hit the mobs with the breath at the same time. And so if you're not making good use of your CC on those adds, it can get very, very hectic very quickly. The last ability is Anchor Shot, and this is just a shot out at a random player. It's a physical hit, and it'll pull you towards the water for 10 seconds. If you touch the water for a couple seconds, you just die because sharks eat you, and basically you just need to run against this pull for the 10 seconds, and you're good. That brings us to the final boss, Solea, and this might be the hardest boss in here as well. It's a rough boss. So this has two phases. The phase transitions at 40%. At the beginning, and then at 0 at the end. The first phase, she will summon a pair of assassins, and these will just kind of jump out and occasionally cast Shuriken Blitz. This is just a physical party hit with bleed, and you just interrupt this. Do not let this go off. It's probably a wipe if this goes off. At the same time, Hyperlight Spark, if you remember from the Zymox encounter, this will bounce, just hit all players once, do some party damage, slightly staggered. And the other thing in this phase is the Collapsing Star, and this also lasts in phase 2. So basically, this orb spawns and it'll last for 30 seconds. It has 4 charges in it, and you need to touch it, that means 3 total times, to eat at least 3 of those charges. Each time you do that, it puts a dot on you, and this dot will stack if you soak it multiple times. So you want to stagger that dot. This dot was hitting exceptionally hard on the PTR, even post nerf. It's going to be a pretty rough healing check, and so you want to stagger those soaks as much as you need to, and then kind of just heal through it. And again, you want to make sure there's only 1 charge when that thing expires, because if there's more, it'll just detonate all the remaining charges onto your party, and that is just bad news. So you don't need to soak this 4 times. You can, if you say you want the damage now from the last one instead of later, you can just soak that last one. But so a total of 3 times is all that's needed, a 4th if you so choose. Now, as soon as you push the boss to 40%, any damage beyond this point doesn't matter because she goes back to full HP when she transforms into the next phase. And initially, she'll have a 99% DR, and basically what you have to do is this Hyperlight Jolt ability will have arrows pointing at each of the party members. She'll shoot 1 at a party member, and then from there to go party member to party member to party member to party member to party member. Red arrows the whole way. You need to hit each of the 5 relics on the kind of around the boss, and this will break the 99% DR on the boss. If you fail to break them all in one go, you'll get a stacking damage increase from Hyperlight Jolt, and she'll jolt again. Technically, this isn't an insta-wipe if you don't get all 5 in one go, but it will hurt a lot. That second tick of Hyperlight Jolt is pain, and if you don't get it in that second tick, it's definitely a wipe for sure. You don't need to get them all at once. Obviously, they won't regen. The hard mode version, you had to get all 5 in one hit. This is the normal mode version, so you don't need to get all 5. You only have the ones you missed if you miss some on the second hit. But again, it's that Hyperlight Jolt damage that you really care about not getting increased. Otherwise, in this phase, energy fragmentation will happen a bunch. She'll shoot each of the relics in succession, and each one blows up and shoots out a bunch of projectiles that you just want to dodge. Again, these are rough. They're pretty scary. Don't get hit by these. And then the last thing is Hyperlight Nova, where each of the relics and the boss will have a 14-yard AoE around them, and you just need to not be in those. Like I mentioned, the Collapsing Star does also happen in this phase with all that stuff, so there's just a ton of damage coming out in this phase, and it can get definitely a little bit spooky. Alright, that's the bosses. We've got the route pulled up here now, so let's go through this. So reminder, all these Murlocs will just flee for their lives, and it is super annoying. You have slows, things like totems from shamans, really, really good. Obviously, frost mages, really, really good, because we know frost mage is really out of the meta. I need to stop making that joke. Yeah, okay. Any kind of CCs, AoE stuns, those kind of things. Save that for the end of these packs, not the beginning, because they will try and run away. And you can see how close these packs are. This is much, even this is much closer than it seems like. Like, when you stand here, you feel like you're going to pull this pack. So very, very careful. And you can see here, this high density area of Murlocs, I just skip the end. I avoid that entire thing. And that's why I go up here and then down to the boss area instead of through this way. There is a high chance that if you screw that up, the running away in fear, they will just chain and pull this entire area, and you will be in for a terrible time. So trust me, you want to avoid that. So the pulls themselves, so originally this giant starts over here, he'll pad over here. These guys, they start like around here, they'll pad around and come up here. So you just double pull off the top this pack, and there is actually zero skill binders. So you are free to nuke right off the top here. And then these guys, both the giant and these little shore runners, sorry, they'll pat to you right here. Both of them will just pat on top of you, so you don't even need to move. You just pull this pack with the seasonal affix on top of this pack, AoE it all down, make sure you get the right relic, of course. And if you're not sure what that means, I will have an encrypted guide posted very, very soon after this video, maybe just a day or two after this video is posted. So keep an eye out for that. Go find it on my channel. I'll explain everything about this affix. So you don't need to move. You pull these two together. These two will join you together. And again, when this giant comes in, hard swap to that giant, murder that giant ASAP. This isn't a bad candidate for a lust. But honestly, you get to the first boss so quickly here that on tyrannical weeks, you may just hold lust till the first boss, even though it feels kind of bad to do so. But it's not a terrible bloodlust on fortified weeks especially. From there, you'll just kind of jump around to here. Obviously, you have some sort of water walking. It makes this a little bit quicker. There's like stuff blocking you here, and it kind of pushes you a little bit too close towards this pack. So you just jump through the water, get up to this pack. These guys here, these shore runners are just running around in a big circle here. So you just pull this pack ASAP, and then when these shore runners come in, you can just add them. There is exactly one skill binder. Again, those are the fish stick guys. That's going to be your priority. Once they start getting low, if they start casting that fish stick, big stun, things like kidney, things like leg sweep if you need to, if that's your only stun, storm bolt, right? Those kind of stuns, mighty bash for guardian druids. All those kind of stuns only when this guy starts casting fish stick, and just try and nuke him down before that fish stick goes off. If it goes off, you either have the option to try and nuke that fish stick down, which is probably recommended. If you're not prepared to kite that fish stick ASAP, just nuke the fish stick down. And remember, it's a totem, but it's a totem that has real HP. So it isn't insta-stomped. You have to focus it down and kill it with single target abilities. Annoying, but it is what it is. And that's why only one skill binder in this pack. You then, again, cross some water here. You pull this pack here. Again, a single skill binder. And this is where you're actually in very close proximity to these two packs and the giant in particular. These shore runners run around in a big circle here. So depending on your timings, they may be added into this pack. Either way, it's not a huge deal if you pull them into this pack. Once the scale binder is dead, you're pretty safe to add the giant plus the shore runners. Anyways, it's just you pull this separate initially because of that scale binder, because having the scale binder, which you want to focus, plus the giant, which you want to focus, is just kind of bad news. So again, focus that skill binder down when it's dead, and when you have control of these feared guys, because you don't want them running into these packs or these packs, then add the Goliath in. These shore runners will just be added whenever they kind of pat into you, and that's fine because they don't do anything, and they just kind of melt. Notice here, I am skipping a couple encrypted packs. So the problem with this pack, double scale binder, super annoying. You'll probably see higher end groups pulling this pack because they will coordinate stops on both these scale binders and nuke them down and just get a use of that encrypted relic. But that's going to require a lot more coordination that you can't expect in pugs. And it's just going to make this pull a nightmare, honestly, for people that aren't coordinated. So trust me, you don't want to pull that pack. This pack, the problem is it's in just so close proximity to all this stuff. This giant pats all the way up to here, I think. Yeah, he just pats all the way along this area. And so this is just not worth all the stuff near it accidentally pulling or having the chance for it to accidentally pull. So instead, yeah, this pack, And then these packs one at a time in front of the door. We normally pull the green one first because the green one tends to kind of pat into this one. And even if it doesn't, then you have room. You can drag this pack a little bit away. Otherwise, this pack might pat into this one, right? So just be aware of the fears, because that's like the worst possible outcome in this scenario, or in this early part of the dungeon, is these murlocs run in and chain packs that you don't want. From here, again, I recommend a skip. I do recommend a skip. These guys have a ton of HP. Are they the same as the giant? They're a little bit less than the giant. They come in 2 packs. Super hard to pull as a 4-pack if you're running a bunch of melee DPS. Maybe fine if you're running ranged, but honestly, like, this is just the biggest value skip. Low pull density, high HP mobs. Similar reason we just never go left in Tazavesh streets. The one downside, if you wipe on this boss, you either have to have like one person come and invis again, or you're kind of screwed, right? So that's the risk, but it's no riskier than something like halls, right, where most groups kind of skip that middle area, and if you wipe on echelon, then you're just kind of screwed, right? Same deal. If you're able to kill this boss, you are fine, because the graveyard, while it is here, there's a portal that spawns right up here that you can take to teleport to the pirate area. So you're fine, assuming you can get past this boss. It's not going to prevent you from running back again after you've killed this boss. Then we get to Hylbrande himself. You're dealing with him. Portal will spawn, and then you get pirate. So this pull, a lot of stuff, pretty easy. These deckhands, like I said, they have a little tank buster, so tank cities probably should be committed here, and these tide stages are just blasting. But because it's the end of the boss, you should have some cooldowns up, most cooldowns up maybe, and you can just group all this stuff up together. Not a big deal. Down here, you can individually pull. Up to you on the order. There's one pack with the encrypted stuff down here. There's another pack over here. And then there's the 4-pack in front of the boss. So if you really want to, you could probably connect a couple pulls, like this pull and this pull here. There's a total of 3 tide sages, but this one only has 1, so it won't be too hard to bring. But again, this is going to be a little scarier for your tank, if your tank feels actually comfortable doing this, should you combine these pulls. And then this 4-pack is right in front of the boss as well. It doesn't activate right away, so you have to pull one of these 2 packs first. Otherwise, you're just kind of AFK sitting there waiting for this pack to activate. And then you got the boss, and then you have the final boss platform. So this guy looks scary. You can walk right around him, and it's a 1-pack of the scariest mob in the dungeon, probably. So you just skip that. You skip that for sure. You walk around here. No stealth or anything needed. You can just walk around. Maybe pets, just be careful. And you can run down here. You can pull this 3-pack. This 5-pack pats around the room in like a U. So just be careful. Maybe pull this pack away a little bit, or like CC this pack so they don't walk into you. Then you can just pull these packs. Then this is a pretty spooky pull. Double Starseer. Definitely very scary. You have to pull them both at the same time. Super rough. I would recommend single targeting one of them down ASAP. And that'll make it much safer. Obviously, whenever those stars spawn, you need to swap to them. They do stagger. It seemed like every time you pulled these guys on the PTR, they wouldn't both cast the star at the same time. But what you do, again, keep an eye out for those frontal lines, because they are pretty hard to see, especially when these mobs are stacked. So you just want to be very, very careful, because again, on high fortified, that will just straight up murder you. So this is probably one of the scary pulls in the dungeon. It's a 2 pull, so be very careful. Not really a skippable pull either, because this is right where the boss is, right? So you need this space for the boss fight. Maybe MDI teams will be able to find some weird thing out where they don't need this space, but honestly, I think you're kind of forced to pull these guys. They might even be channeling on the boss. I can't remember exactly. But either way, they need to die, and they're spooky. So focus one down, and then focus the other one down, and that'll mean that you won't have those back-to-back stars. You'll only have 1 star, and then you'll have a bit of a break before the next star once one is dead. But that wraps up this video. Guys, if you have any questions at all regarding this dungeon, the first wing of Tazavesh, feel free to drop a comment down below, or you can stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics, and I'll do my best to answer. Again, though, if you want info on the other wing of Tazavesh, Streets of Wonder, I have that video over on my channel. And if you are looking for encrypted routes, simple, easy to execute, great for pugs, any set of affixes, that video is going to be up very, very soon after this one is posted. So be sure to subscribe to my channel to be notified when it goes up. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.